want to give you a look at the main sticking points in this. Putin wants Ukraine to cede all of the Donbas region, including areas under Ukrainian control. Trump has also told Zelenskyy to drop the demand for Russia to return Crimea, which it illegally annexed in 2014. Now, Ukraine says it will not cede territory, and legally it can't under its constitution. President Zelenskyy says the current front lines could be the basis for a ceasefire while talks are held. Russia, however, has ruled out a ceasefire, saying fighting is only going to end with a comprehensive peace deal. President Trump says Ukraine will not be allowed into NATO, one of Russia's key demands. Instead, it's going to receive security guarantees similar to NATO members. Ukraine says it needs clarity on how the guarantees are going to work. Well, Hanna Shelest is the Security Studies Programme Director at Ukrainian Prism. It's a foreign policy and security think tank. She's joining us from Odessa in Ukraine. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. I want to pick up on that point about Ukrainian's constitution. If I understand it correctly, President Zelenskyy does not have the legal right to be able to cede control. It's down to the constitution, which says there has to be a referendum if the country is going to cede away any territory. How difficult is that going to make it for President Zelenskyy when it comes to these talks?
First of all, yes, it's not only constitution of Ukraine, but that's also the recognition by the Russian Federation, at least in 3 international treaties, the borders of Ukraine, the bilateral treaties, the treaties after that being signed. So we, for those that collapsed, for example, the Soviet Union, so the Russian Federation itself recognized Ukrainian borders. And to change Ukrainian constitution is very difficult process. It's not only the referendum when we speak about the territorial integrity. That's also quite a long process through the courts, through the parliament, through other procedures. So de facto, any changes can take up to 2 years if to follow all the procedures. And Ukraine is a democratic state. We are following the procedures according to the rule of law. So for the President Zelenskyy, I can't say that it would be difficult. That would be easy to stand in this position because the population of Ukraine completely supports him. Why we need to give up the territories that Russians even never occupied. And here, just 2 numbers. Since November 2022, Russia managed to occupy only 1% of the territory of Ukraine. And till now, after 11 years of aggression in Donbas, Russia occupied 75% of Donetsk region. So even after 11 years of warfare, they were not able to occupy one region in full. In this case, is it concessions? Is it a compromise that is proposed to Ukraine, or just a pure surrender and gift to the Russian president? So in this case, the negotiations in Washington definitely will be difficult because we need to change this paradigm of conversation. Who is compromising? Who is gifted during these negotiations?
And that's part of the difficulty, isn't it? We don't have a lot of details about what it might be discussed at the meetings this afternoon, but from the outside, it seems as though President Trump and President Putin seem to think that in order to stop the war, Ukraine essentially has to give Russia everything that Russia wants. Is there anything on the table, from what we know so far, that Ukraine might be able to agree to?
First of all, definitely we don't know all details. So we understand that the negotiations didn't went as expected, according to the moods during the press conference and the statements. However, the statements of the White House afterwards and those who were at the negotiations were not that much positive. And that's one of the reasons why the European partners are joining Ukraine today in Washington, because they need to explain that Russian president was manipulating with the U.S. president de facto, that he understood that Donald Trump would like deal, not peace. So the deal, the quick deal, is more important for him than the long-term consequences of what can be in this deal. And also that all these agreements are not just about Ukraine. They are about the whole European security. And, Russia felt the blood. Why they need to stop? They haven't stopped after Transnistria, after Abkhazia, after Ossetia, already breaking the sovereignty of 2 other states. So now with Ukraine, who said that the next country cannot be the EU or NATO member state?
I was just reading that in 2010, in the presidential election in Ukraine then, about 90% of voters in the Donbas region backed Viktor Yanukovych. He was a pro-Russian candidate. How do people in the Donbas region, given the fact that it seems to be a focus for these talks, feel about what could happen to their region?
First of all, I would disagree that the people of Donbas was pro-Russian or that the President Yanukovych at that time in 2010 was pro-Russian. He definitely had good relations with the Russian Federation. He was afraid of the European Union integration because his regime was very corrupted. But at the same time, he was the guy whose signature is under our application to the NATO membership back in 2005. He is the guy who started negotiations for the European Union membership. And only after pressure from Putin in 2013, he rejected signing the association agreement in Vilnius. But if you look to the decisions and signatures that he put from 2005 to 2013, he made a lot of those first steps towards the NATO and EU integration. It was more about corruption, it was more about the surrounding, and it was more about the money from Russia and pressure from the Russian president that made him to change position in 2012, 2013.
Hanna Shelest, we appreciate it. Hanna Shelest is Security Studies Program Director at the Ukrainian Prism. Thank you very much indeed.
Don't miss out, get the full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news and expert insights. Like, share, stay ahead.